You're listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brianna Hicks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brianna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast, where I give you insight, awareness, and enlightenment about your parenting and your relationship with your kids. In today's episode, I am answering a follow-up question from Brianna. I answered the question in a recent episode, and then she listened to the episode and emailed some follow-up questions. So I want to circle around to that and answer the additional questions. Before we get into that, I want to let you all know that as of next episode, we are introducing a season 3, and we're going to go back to a little bit more of curriculum-based teaching episodes. And we will still take questions, and I will still answer questions in a second episode each week. If you all want me to answer something or process something, absolutely, please still send that in, Brianna@thekidcounselor.com. However, we're going to go through the things that you need to be aware of while your child is processing things through child-centered play therapy. And I know some of you may not necessarily have your children in child-centered play therapy at this point. I know many of you do. And I know many of your play therapists have recommended this podcast to you. And so either way, this will be helpful because this is going to be things that will help you understand your children. It will help you understand the way that children's brains operate. It will help you understand their process of working through things. It will help give you some strategies and tools to better communicate and relate to them. So I do think it will be universally helpful, but it will be specifically how you need to see your child's process of working through the therapeutic journey with a play therapist in light of understanding them developmentally and what's going on for them, how you can better communicate, etc. So that's going to be starting next episode. I'm very excited about that. But circling back to Brianna's question, I'm going to read some of her email and then we'll dive in. We're making efforts to offer choices. I understand that you mentioned it would be a time-consuming process. However, the children suggest opting for nothing. And we respond by saying that if they don't make a choice, we will step in. And then the situation continues to escalate. Okay, let me pause there because there's more, but let's stop there and we'll tackle that first. All right, so the beauty of choice giving is that when a child suggests, as you say, opting for nothing, that is also a choice. Now, you said we respond by saying if they don't make a choice, we will step in. That's a threat. And I'm not saying that you necessarily threatened them in the moment, but I just want to make it really clear. Words matter and our language matters. Our phrase matters. So the phrase to be fully child-centered in your parenting approach is you really would like to choose neither, but that's not part of the choice. The choices are, you can choose option A or you can choose option B. Which do you choose? So notice that we reflected the fact that the child does not want to make a choice or they wish they could make neither choice. So we validate that. They're not wrong for not liking the options. So we're going to acknowledge that. And then we fall back on the choice. But that's not part of the choice. The choices are, and you reiterate that. You're going to go through that 3 times. That is usually enough for a child to realize you're not conceding and they are going to be limited to option A and option B. If that does not get them to the ability where they can make a choice, then you're going to use this phrase. You really don't want to choose, but if you choose not to choose, you choose for me to choose for you. Let me say that again because it's choosy. You really don't want to choose, but if you choose not to choose, you choose for me to choose for you. And here is what that communicates. The choice is the choice. There will be no deviation from that. And if you choose not to choose, that is also a choice. See, the child thinks that they're not making the choice. They think they're skirting the choice. Well, I don't want either one of those, so I'm not going to pick either one. That's child logic because they're not rational. So I'm just not going to pick one of those and then I'm not making a choice. Well, choosing not to choose is a choice. And your phrase is going to be, you really would like to not choose, or you wish you could choose neither. But if you choose not to choose, you choose for me to choose for you. And then you're going to choose for the child if they choose not to choose. And what they learn very quickly is it's better for them to have a choice than not have a choice. See, they think they're getting some power back by refusing to decide. But really what they're doing is giving their power away, because making a choice is power. And it's going to help them understand that you're giving them a measure of power by giving them the choice. And when you choose for them, they have no power. And that is very convincing for them learning that when they're given a choice, they can choose from the options. All right, so that's how to address that part. Let me continue with the email. My 9-year-old tends to initiate fights with someone every time things don't go her way, doing or saying something she knows will be disliked. I need guidance on addressing this behavior. We are trying to allocate 15 minutes to nurture a more positive relationship. Okay, so that's a huge component right there. We want to make sure that we're dedicating one-on-one time each week with each of our children. So I'm so happy to hear that you're giving that 15 minutes for the positive relationship. Make sure that she knows she gets to decide what you do. She gets to spend that time how she chooses, and it's unconditionally accepting. There are no rules. There are no expectations. Limits are needed if they're needed, but it's only for safety and making sure things aren't getting damaged or broken. So the goal is that you are unconditionally loving and accepting of her in those 15 minutes. That will naturally help her to start behaving in more self-enhancing ways. However, if she initiates fights every time things don't go her way, and she's doing things that she knows are going to be disliked, that's a power grab. We recognize that for what it is. It's power and control need. She feels that things are out of her control and she doesn't have power, so she's grasping where she thinks that she can take it. And that's why choices are so important. You want to continually provide her with choices so that she is able to feel a measure of control. It's also really important that the choices are mutually agreeable. And it's also just for the sake of being given a choice. So I don't know what your daughter's name. I'm going to say Jill. So Jill, you can choose for us to have broccoli tonight for dinner, or you can choose for us to have green beans tonight for dinner. Which do you choose? Assuming she likes both of those vegetables. Do not give a choice for something that a child does not like. That's not a choice. So if she likes both of those vegetables, you're giving her an opportunity to make a choice. It has to be a positive context. It has to be something that she likes. Choices cannot always be tied to limits. Choices also need to be for empowerment. So it's really important that as often as possible, you're giving choices. And when she does or says something that she knows will be disliked, she is trying to gain power over that person or that situation. Now, if it needs a limit, then absolutely set a limit. But otherwise, you can just acknowledge what she did. You chose to say something and you knew that that would irritate that person. Or you chose to do that and you knew that they wouldn't like that. And what you're doing is saying out loud that she's making a choice. And over time, she will start to choose to behave in more self-enhancing ways. Okay, so then continuing with the email, we're making a conscious effort to avoid yelling and remaining calm. If her friend invites her to play, she may initially agree, but then becomes demanding, leading to a rapid escalation of the situation. Is it normal for a 9-year-old to be preoccupied with their friend's whereabouts, as evidenced by her constant inquiries during our camping trip and tendency to follow her friend around despite being rebuffed? Well, yes, for a child that has to have power and control. Because the not knowing feels completely powerless. The unknown is overwhelming for a child that wants control. So, of course, I want things to be my way. I want to know exactly what's going on. I want to follow someone around. It makes her feel that she has a measure of control. Because if she doesn't know, if she is unaware, if something is outside of her knowledge, she then is at the mercy of whatever that may be. The grasping at power and control is extending into relationships as well. This is why we need to give choices as much as possible. When I comment on this behavior, she dismisses me saying, "Mom, stop, I'm fine." It's worth noting that she can be very helpful when in a good mood, highlighting her capacity for positive behavior. I suspect that boredom contributes to her propensity to fight with her sister. How can I best address this issue, which consistently arises during car travel and vacations? From a very long time ago episode, I talked about when kids are in a compromised state, tired, hungry, or bored, they are less likely to be able to behave in appropriate ways. So absolutely, I suspect being bored will contribute. Being tired or being hungry will also contribute. Feeling powerless, in this case, will also contribute. So therefore, you're going to want to proactively set yourself up for success as well as her. What are things you can pack ahead of time, plan ahead of time that will go in the car with you all so that she has things to do, so that she has things that she enjoys, so that there are opportunities for her to do something instead of getting bored. And this ideally is not going to be electronic in nature. OG, like when I was growing up, we would find the letters of the alphabet in order from billboards. That doesn't require any planning ahead of time. We would play the license plate game where you had to find as many other state license plates as you could while you drive and you keep track. That requires no packing and planning. However, there are car ride games that have been created now. I know, for example, Melissa and Doug has a license plate game board, and you flip the state over as you find it, so that you're able to keep track of the states that you have seen on the license plates. They have, I don't know if it's Melissa and Doug, but they also have an alphabet game where you flip it over when you find the letters on the billboards. You can find certain colors of cars. You can play car bingo. There are all kinds of things that give her something to do, that keep her engaged so that it's not just boredom fighting. Now, there's also books. There's coloring, there's all kinds of other things that she can bring with her so that she's able to stay busy and not feel like there's nothing to do but get into irritating, aggravating kind of scenarios with her sister. However, there needs to be a limit associated with that kind of behavior. So, girls, when you choose to fight in the backseat of the car, you choose negative consequence. When you choose not to fight in the backseat of the car, you choose positive consequence. Now, that might be when you get to where you're going, they aren't able to do the bonfire that night at the campground, or they're not able to stay up. They have to go to bed early because they've chosen to fight. Whatever's going to matter to them, that's going to be the currency there. So when you choose to behave in appropriate ways, there's a positive outcome associated with it. When you choose to behave in negative ways, there's a negative outcome associated with it. You say this completely calmly. You say this neutrally. You say this factually. Let me be really clear, because this is easy to get ourselves in this situation. We don't go, if you guys fight in the car, when we get to the campground, you're not going to be able to be at the fire. That's a threat. It's not neutral. It's not child-centered. And we have completely lost the sense of you are now being given a choice and therefore you are choosing the outcome. Girls, when you choose to fight in the back seat, you choose not to have the bonfire tonight at the campground. If you choose not to fight in the back seat, you choose to have the bonfire tonight at the campground. And what will eventually happen is they start to correct each other. They start to help each other. Stop. If you do that, we're going to choose not to have the bonfire tonight. That's exactly what we're looking for, is that they support each other and they help each other to comply with limits, because it matters for both of them. It takes two to fight. My mom used to say that when I was little, and it used to drive me nuts because my brother would inevitably be tormenting me. Not that I ever had anything to do with it, I'm sure, but my brother would be, in my perspective, tormenting me. And then my mom would say, it takes two to fight and it takes two to get along. And I always was like, oh my gosh, being an oldest, But the point of that is they can choose to get along collectively or they can choose to fight collectively. It is very much a collaborative decision. And so they will start to self-correct each other, which is exactly what you want, because you don't want to be the one nagging them, telling them to stop fighting. So Brianna, I hope that is helpful. You kind of gave me a whole bunch of different questions as a result of the earlier episode. So I'm grateful that you emailed again. And I'm hopeful that is helpful to each of you, because very common scenarios. We all deal with situations like you described. So I appreciate the email. As always, please email me if you would like me to answer a question for you, Brianna@thekidcounselor.com. And as I mentioned, we're going to be going into curriculum and specific teaching type of podcasts in the near future. So next episode, we will begin with that series for a new season. All right. I appreciate y'all so much. Have a great week. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brianna Hicks. For more episodes and to subscribe to our newsletter, please go to www.playtherapyparenting.com.